This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, I will call to order this August 17th, 2022 meeting of Monterey Select Board at 6:01 p.m. And I'm Justin Maycook, President Town Hall.
Susan Cooper, President Town Hall.
So we do have a meeting with Peter Murkett, the Chair of the Renewable Energy Working Group, at 6:30. But in advance of that, we can get right into old business.
Let's do it.
So the town charter committee status. So I reached out to the people who have been appointed to the committee and those who expressed interest last fall, to see who was reaching out. So there's a packet number 1. And out of I reached out to 4 people who've been appointed, and I think about 6 or 7 that expressed interest, and I've heard back from 4 or 5. So Don Coburn, just going in order that we have him here, Don said, I don't think I'd be a good choice for that committee, because he's firmly opposed to the idea of a town charter. Hillel, who we have present with us, said that he is still interested in serving on a town charter committee. Debbie Slater said that she would like to withdraw her name from consideration. And Sean Tryon said he would be part of a town charter committee. And out of the 4 who've been appointed, Mickey Jervis, John Silbert, Catherine Hurst, and Ron Winters, I haven't heard back
From any of them?
From any of them. I did talk to Mickey.
Okay.
And I think she is on the fence.
What's the minimum number of people that, I mean, it doesn't make sense to only do it with 2 people, does it?
No, I mean, I guess the point is, so Don didn't wanna be on it because he's pretty sure that the town doesn't want a town charter. I don't wanna.
Personally, I think that's a reason to be.
Yeah.
I would disagree with Don's assessment that you shouldn't be on the committee because you don't, I think that that's a perfectly reasonable conclusion for the group to make, but
Maybe he didn't understand what the purpose of the committee was.
that is entirely possible.
He did, because he could have easily, because I wrote in my email, I quoted the purpose of the committee, right, to Don. But, I mean, I think maybe his point being, he's no longer open-minded, and I'm not, I mean, he said himself, I don't think I'd be a good choice for that committee, I don't know.
Okay.
And Mickey Jervis, from speaking with her, was somewhat in the same boat, where, she was maybe more open to it, and now she doesn't feel like that kind of change might be necessary. So, but she didn't necessarily say she didn't wanna be on it.
So then there's Catherine John, and who was the other one?
Ron Winters.
Okay.
And I can follow up with them. I guess the point being, if there's not, I mean, depending on the level of interest, you don't really need maybe more than 3 people for a committee.
I think you do need more than 2. Did you have a question?
Unless I'm mistaken, Janet put her name in originally, and she never got an email.
Janet.
My wife.
This is what.
My wife.
Oh, I just sent it to your email address, but I can email her as well.
You're gonna have to, just because we're different people, and
Yeah.
I know you didn't say dear Hillel, I understand.
Yeah.
I was really upset about that, but I recovered.
Yeah.
But I just didn't think it was a dear Joe letter that said open to everybody, okay, and I thought that you were sending it to everybody who was, and it's okay, Janet and I do not, marriage is perfect, but we just do not share emails.
Well, I think part of the reason actually I had done that, by the way, was because when it said that you and Janet were interested, you emailed it from your email.
Right.
So I just emailed back your
You just
email.
responded.
But,
I think I copied her on that.
you may have, I'm not certain. But, so I guess engaging interest,
So it seems like we have 2 potential members and 3 to 4 people we don't know where they currently stand. Correct?
maybe more, because Debbie and Don were
Or
the only 2 people who
Possibly
really said
5 because
no.
there's Janet too.
Debbie
Debbie
Slater
and-
said no.
Pardon?
Debbie Slater said no, Jervis is on the fence, and you haven't
Right.
heard back from,
From
We
the-
haven't heard back from Silverhurst or, Winters, which we could reach back out to. I mean, I don't, bad thing it's been brought up, you know, whether whatever the answer may be.
I mean,
I don't
I
think it
have
hurts
my
to do some
opinion, but that's not
research.
what but the town wanted us to have a
right.
committee to assess it, so maybe we should give it one more shot, because there's enough months left between now and the next town meeting for them to assess whether that's something that Monterey should pursue, and if it's not, then that's a fine thing to come back and say, and if it is, then how do we proceed, like,
Yeah, I think, yeah, it would be a multi-year process, cause then if this is really a research committee, the next committee would actually draft a charter. So,
that would be a totally different purview, right?
Yes.
So,
If it gets beyond the select,
it's just a question of like, do we put it to the town that, like, if the recommendation is that we shouldn't, then we tell them we made the committee and the recommendation was that we shouldn't. And if the recommendation is otherwise, then we tell them that and the town decides what it wants to do.
so would you put Janet back into consideration?
I can send her the same email that I sent to the other people who are
Janet,
interested.
you have it, Janet, Max.
I have
and
emailed
stuff.
her before.
And perhaps if you re-email those other 4 people, well,
Yeah, I can
3 of them,
do
you could
follow-up.
say, could you please answer by blah blah, or, you know, I will take your name off the list.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I will follow up with Janet and everyone who I've already emailed, whether they are
On the-
currently appointed or expressed interest, and have it answered.
Okay, that sounds
So I will
good.
follow up, and hopefully we can, you know, by next meeting, really have a sense where we stand. The Votes Act and police officer details at elections, I did get an email from Donna Brewer today, in response to.
The Votes Act.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Hello.
thanks for coming.
In response to the Votes
Mickey
Act.
Jervis not being here is quite upsetting. I
Maybe
think-
she's actually taking a vacation or something. It's a thing that could happen.
I think that operation really played with your mind. Bye. Have a great evening.
Alright, so what did Donna say about?
I'm reading it now more or less for the first time myself, because I just saw it a few minutes ago. Although it was sent this morning, I didn't get to my email until a few minutes ago. So, here, I'll just read it out loud so we can think through it. And I just emailed to Melissa, did it get through via email?
Check right now. You mean you print it off or?
I can read it off my
Okay.
laptop for me, but. And it should be on to you as well, Susan.
Yep, here it is.
Okay, so let's see. The questions I asked were, I quoted the election advisory and asked, can the select board legally delegate this authority to assign police officers and constable to polling places to the police chief? And she responded, the statute itself reads slightly differently from the advisory. The statute reads that the select board, in consultation with its election officers and registrars, shall detail a sufficient number of police officers or constable for each polling place. I read this to mean that the select board tells the chief of police how many officers should be assigned to each polling place. The specific officer or officers who are assigned remains the choice of the chief. For example, this means that the select board, after consulting with the election officers and registrars, decides that 2 officers should be assigned to the one polling place. The chief then picks Officer Jane Doe and Constable John Rowe to cover the assignment. I do not believe that the decision of how many to assign can be delegated to the chief, since the statute was amended specifically to remove the decision of how many to assign from the chief. So, and then I think actually we should go through the other questions because they are related. So the question number 2 that I asked was, regardless of who has the authority to assign officers, is it necessary that there be at least 1 police officer or 1 constable at each polling place? And might the authority in charge legally determine that neither a police officer nor a constable is necessary? Donna responded, the law requires that at least 1 officer or constable be assigned to each polling place. The officer or constable is assigned specific duties by statute to ensure that elections are secure, free, and fair. They hold the key to the ballot box, enforce election laws such as ensuring that no one disrupts voting or tries to vote after the polls are closed. Note that the requirement that an officer be present at the polling place on election day differs from what is necessary for early voting. An officer may be assigned to an early voting site but shall be detailed on election day.
The strange thing there is that that still sounds like the constable could serve that function.
Yes, I mean, it's worded, police officers or constables. I think sometimes there is an and, but you know how sometimes and can mean different things? Like
Right.
and could mean almost an or and. Like I've never read anywhere such that, you know, you would need to have a police officer and a constable. And the way she writes it, it seems like it could be either or, but there needs to be at least one or the other, at the very least.
Did you ever reach out to, the constable to find out whether he was available to be there that day?
I did not, my sense is that, it's, how many hours of voting is it?
12 to 7, right?
It's 7 hours of voting. My sense is that he can't be there for 7 hours in a row. Whether or not he could, you know, and the other thing is, a constable is, you know, basically like a stipend.
Right.
At once a year, and I know it's mostly really a volunteer position, but the point being, I think typically there's been an officer.
I don't have a problem with having an officer, I'm just trying to fill out what the expectations are. But it's pretty clear in number 3 that it's a duty and that should be a shift duty.
Yeah, let me read number 2 because I haven't read it yet. So I asked, it is unclear if the town is allowed election, a detail rate, should working election be treated as a detail? If not, what can the town pay and what does the town do in a scenario when the officer working it is salaried, if detail rate is not allowed? And Donna replied, the town pays the officer who is assigned their regular rate for fulfilling an assigned shift for the day. Again, as there are specific statutory duties assigned to the officer and attendance by an officer is required, the chief should assign someone who is on shift at the time of the election. Since the voting hours are so long, it will require either a change of shift or an extended shift with the possibility of overtime pay for a non-exempt employee. This would be a detailed rate of pay if someone must be called in outside of the normal shift to cover the election. So the one catch-22 that we're in, unfortunately, is that the select board does decide how many officers and or constables should be at a polling place, but it does say after consulting with the election officers and registrars.
Right.
Which we are.
Well, we had a consultation from the election officer, which would be the clerk, correct? Who asked us to assign an officer.
Yes.
I believe that was, I'm correct, right?
Yeah.
That was.
I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean,
We did not consult with the registrars.
We didn't get a chance to consult with the registrars. I think it's kind of a, unique circumstance where we have an election earlier than everyone else and the law just changed. So after consulting with the clerk, you know, I would even make it a motion that the town assign one officer for the special election on Tuesday, the 23rd from 12 to 7.
I would second the motion.
And then, I don't know if there's any discussion on that.
I don't have anything to add other than what we've already said, not on that motion anyway. I would say that it would stand to reason that we should have one officer present at the other 2 elections, and I did have, as I mentioned, that previous conversation with Gareth about the possibility of, since we have enough warning for the primary and the general election, the US election coming up in November, to arrange the shifts such that we have the on-shift person serving that duty, even if they have to change shift, right? And we could have the other person that's on call answer calls should there be any, but looking at the last 2 logs, you can never rule out that there might be an emergency, but the number on any given day is pretty low if we ran a stat for the year. So it could well be a possibility that the person in the room never even gets a call during the day. But if we had an on-call, then that person could respond and the shift officer stays in, so we're only paying for the respond to call rather than the whole shift. That won't work probably
Understood.
for next week, but.
Well, except the person on call is salary, so. I guess I would just ask that you guys remember that I think details are often considered a perk for officers, and we wanna try to keep staff happy and wanting to stay in Monterey, and if you start taking away things where they're used to be able to earn a little extra income.
There's a lot of shift duties that are being handed out for all kinds of work, and I feel like normal years have one election, or, I guess on years where there's a federal election, there's 3. But every other year, there's only 1. It's not, in the relative scheme of things of the whole year, that many hours, and I know nobody likes election duty, but on the typical day, the officers are not responding to 40 calls. And many days, 0 calls. So asking them to serve their shift standing around, it's boring, but they're standing around in here, or they're sitting in their vehicle waiting for speeders, or they're sitting in the office. It's a reasonable thing to ask a duty officer to do. I totally see your point, but an extra $45 an hour, I mean, I know it's an unpleasant duty because it's boring, but let's hope it stays boring, because the alternative is not very pleasant. I mean.
So I'll call a vote on the motion to assign 1 police officer at the special election.
Yep.
And I will vote yes. And
Yes,
Susan will vote yes, and so that settles this special election. The select board is designating 1 officer, which the police chief will actually assign the Jane Doe and John Rowe, 2.
I'm not sure what we'll do about their assigned rate.
Yes, so
What she says here, though.
So the chief would assign someone. So I don't know that we need that decision. I would tend to agree with you that if there is an officer on duty, they could, as Donna says, that the officer on duty could do it, or it's a detail rate of pay if someone wants to be called in outside of the normal shift to cover the election. I think that's really up to Gareth, and I don't know, to some degree. If he's actually scheduling the people, he may know who if someone needs to be called in.
Right.
Outside. But it seems like either we go with the detail rate or the regular shift rate.
Gareth is out this week, right? Do you know if he already contacted someone about?
I did ask him.
It's Tuesday, so it's not like there's
I did
maybe
ask
that's
him a couple weeks ago.
And he said.
Let me check.
Okay.
I said. That's not very. Police chief. I said, hi Garrett, the select board discussed the police detail for the special election at our last meeting. This was 11 days ago I sent this. Due to a recent change in the law, we were not entirely clear whose authority it is to designate a police detail for elections. It may have changed. The board agreed that whether it is our responsibility or the police chief's, it was appropriate for the police chief to be in charge and would delegate the authority to you if possible. If you could please proceed as though you have the authority of organizing the police detail for the Tuesday, August 23rd election, special election. While we continue research and learn about the change in law, that would be much appreciated. Please let me know if you have any questions or insights. And Garrett said, hi Justin, yes, the law has changed. However, I also think we should go forward with the chief of police making these arrangements. I will make sure there is an officer for the election on Tuesday, August 23rd, 12 p.m. to 7 p.m.
All right, then I'm gonna assume that the deal will be done.
Yeah, and so what we learned from Donna was that we can't and shouldn't delegate how many the decision for how many officers and constables, but, once we decide whether it's 1, 2, 3, then Gareth will do the scheduling.
Right.
Right.
Sorry, 3 just seemed amusing to me.
8,
God, I
10.
hope we don't need 3.
Um,
Not because it'll cost too much, but because the implication of the problems are just too great. Alright,
so if that
I think that's that,
settles
right?
that item. Special town meeting items, storm damage, tree work, elevator code upgrade, unpaid fiscal year 22 bills. So as we start to draft a special town meeting warrant, I do have a couple questions. So the 8,500 for the elevator code upgrade is pretty certain as long as we do it the next couple of months, I believe. We don't have the unpaid bills yet from the cemetery, we don't, okay, I will follow up with Linda, to try and get those sooner than later, because we need to know the amounts. So I will do that, and then my last question relates somewhat to an email that I also just saw about tree work. So,
The one from Michelle?
yeah.
Okay.
So Michelle, we obviously discussed with Michelle last night about the tree work as a result of the storm, and she drove by the community center and said, I don't see many, trees down, $25,000 worth of trees down. And I haven't gotten a chance to follow up with her.
I did.
You did?
I think her my first follow-up email may have confused the matter because I mentioned that there was additional work and I think she concatenated the two, I should have just left that out of it. But I did clarify in the second email saying, no, it's the stumps of the 11 broken trees, and I said 10, but the broken trees, and the concern is that they are weakened. And I further clarified, yeah, we can choose to defer that work. But it did occur in a July storm, it was unforeseen. And while we don't know if there will be more storms of that caliber, it's likely there will be storms. She wanted to know why the trees hadn't been removed when National Grid did the work, and I said, well, because they were damaged at the time, and I don't know if they would threaten lines. The fact that they can threaten a road doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna threaten the power line. I mean, they might, but they might not, depending on where they are. I mean, we could put off the work in the park too, right, and just leave it closed for a year. It's just very unfortunate that it occurred in July, at the very beginning of the fiscal year, and if we have to wait, the park would have to be closed and the stumps will be there, and maybe we'll get lucky and we won't have a storm.
Yeah.
But I don't really wanna put my eggs in that basket.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that, there's some discretion here, right? Yes, the park could stay closed. It's not, and I think I said this last night, it's not that there are trees down on roads that are still closed. That was all resolved within a couple days of the storm. But I also think that if we were going into a budget process and we had this issue, we didn't have money for it, we would include it in the budget. Because it's unsightly and it's closing down one of the parks.
I'd also say, it seems unlikely that deferring it a year will make it cost less. In fact, it seems likely that cost will go up, not down. So deferring the work doesn't necessarily mean there's a savings of any kind.
Yeah.
Right, just like much deferred maintenance usually results in greater expenditure, not less.
The only thing that I would add, on this topic is I would like to get a sense, and between now and next meeting, I would like to either go with Jim Hunt, and I don't know if someone from John Field is available or not. I don't wanna drag them out if they've already quoted the job. And get a sense of what, how much is this 25,000, or roughly $25,600 getting us? Because I know at the community center, one of the topics is there's all these trees in a stand that have been weakened by losing some of the trees. And I need
So
to get a,
is the 25K the 11 broken trees that we know are going to be a problem, or does it include all of the work? Is that what you're?
yeah, because
Yeah.
there's a fair bit of preventative work, which I don't think is necessarily outside of the scope of what we could fund at a special town meeting, because, you know, it is kind of unforeseen that the trees are going to continue
Right.
to fall. But I would like to meet with Jim Hunt, I don't know if you want to as well, we should do it separately,
Right.
unless we want to post like a meeting, but I think if we're going to ask for this kind of money, and from what I understand at Bidwell Park, it's pretty simple, there's all these trees down, they need to remove them.
That is
The
pretty
community
direct,
center, there's a little bit more question between the bottom, stem versus some proactive preventative work, which I still think is very reasonable.
But it would be good to know what's included in the estimate. And, the thing is, if you do it in 2 batches, it just ends up costing more.
Yeah, that is.
Right, so we could break it up and let's assume there's 2 possibilities. Either the 25K includes all the ones that we're talking about, or it includes only the 11. If it includes only 11, it is what it is. If it includes all, and we try to break it into 2, we probably end up paying significantly more than 25 because you've got all the fees for bringing the fruit to the site.
Yeah.
So financially, it might be better to do the whole thing at one go.
Yeah.
Than to do it in 2 goes, but it would be good to know for sure.
Yeah. In the email that Jim sent us in advance of the July 27th meeting, he outlined in red and then yellow and talked about
Oh, the
this-
picture,
the
right.
stems. But then that was kind of separate from the one where he provided the Excel sheet. So I just do need some more clarification. So I'm gonna meet with Jim. If we wanna meet with Jim together, we could always post a meeting. I think probably it makes sense for us to meet with him individually.
Yeah.
But before we go asking, for this kind of.
No,
just
I
want some
agree,
clarity.
I don't see any, and I suspect that, given Michelle's interest, we can ask her if she'd like to attend, cause she could attend either the one with you or the one with me, without a problem. If she wanted to, or she can just get our take on it, up to her.
So I guess as soon as, and then the other question I just had is, and we talked about, we're gonna most likely take the money out of stabilization, especially if we can call the meeting anytime in the next month or so. And then we have to figure out which accounts, and maybe I'll work with Melissa to figure out which accounts the money would go into. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like for the tree work, obviously for the cemetery, and then the code upgrade for the elevator. And I will follow up with Linda to, about the cemetery.
Oh,
Linda
that
did.
is good.
So that's that, and maybe we'll have a draft warrant next time we meet, and probably really a draft one. Hopefully, once we get some of those numbers, and we'll meet with Jim, probably individually, or otherwise we'll call a meeting, and we'll get to work on those.
Okay.
I see it is 6:29 PM, so we do have one item of old business, but we are meeting with Peter at 6:30, and I thought I saw Peter on the line.
He was, but he got off.
I don't see him anymore.
Okay.
I didn't have further questions for Peter about the program, but why don't we wait? Do you mind if we continue on with
I have
business?
no problem
Okay.
continuing on with business.
So we'll continue on with business.
And even interrupting should he return.
So, Milfoil Remediation bid and contract
So the Lake Garfield Working Group is recommending that you accept the bid.
from New England Aquatics.
So, I just wanna make sure I understand the documents. So the beginning of the document is the proposal document.
Yeah.
Unfilled in.
Yeah.
The one they responded to that we previously saw.
Right.
And then is the remainder of this the actual contract?
Yes.
Okay. Except there's things that are not filled in.
Which I will.
Okay,
I wasn't sure if you were gonna vote tonight.
So this is, and I saw the invitation to bid. So when, I guess, I am a little bit confused about where, is this a contract with New England
Yes,
Aquatics?
yes. It will be once I fill in all this.
But this was really what we put out in the invitation to bid, right?
Yep.
And they're just agreeing to it. And I did remember seeing this is a $50,000 limit
yeah, there's a hard cap.
compensation. The total amount of this agreement shall not exceed $50,000.
At the hourly rate indicated in the cost proposal submitted by blank.
New England Aquatics.
Right, New England Aquatics,
I'll fill it out over here.
no problem. Yeah, I think there's some things on the first page, item F agreement with town of Monterey.
And so the idea is that whenever we voted on the special article for $50,000 for milfoil control in the lake, this is using all of that money.
That's right, did we ever get clarification on whether they had money to pay the ecologist who was doing the assessment?
My understanding is that Friends of Lake Garfield does
Pay for
that,
that, okay,
because that's not included
right, that's
in
not,
this
yeah,
bid,
definitely not, yeah,
but it happens.
okay.
That is kind of an awkward thing though, because it seems like the two services, well, the actual dash removal of the milfoil relies on the lake scientist in part to figure out where the milfoil is and where it's at.
I'm also a little confused that it's August. Do they normally do this work at the end of the growing season?
I believe they started with a drawdown.
Okay, they do it then, so they do it at the end, alright.
There's also a, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's a summer period where they are not allowed to do the work.
Hmm.
I see Dennis on, Dennis may be able to fill us in if he's.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, Dennis. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, good evening. Is there feedback that I'm getting?
We don't hear feedback. Do you hear feedback?
Yes, I'll just continue. Yes, there is a period before September 1st that benthic barriers or mechanical harvesting would not be able to occur. So the Like working group is awaiting approvals for that, probably will take place before the end of the year. But in terms of work to be done, I'm correct in that the work would start in the fall and it would be completed for the dash beginning in the fall and also in the late spring before the end of the month of June.
Okay.
So I'm not sure I heard.
Yeah.
Late fall and before June.
Yes, that
Okay.
was, I believe, and Dennis, this work needs a notice of intent, which is gonna be approved by the Conservation Commission? Is that what you were saying?
The notice of intent, I believe, was presented, and I believe the Concom is on board with it, but I can verify that if you want to leave that as a condition. The work would not start until September.
Okay. Thank you
Thanks,
for filling
Dennis.
us in, Dennis.
Okay,
Everything else seems like it's what the contract they've used before, so as long as there's a hard cap in there and it's no more than the amount that was allocated, and this is the company that's done it for years, it seems a reasonable contract to me.
Yeah, and so this is, I will make a motion to accept the Milfoil Remediation bid contract. Melissa,
Yes,
are we accepting their bid?
accept the bid and award the contract.
Right,
We'll
accept the
accept the bid and award the contract to New England Aquatics, and the time frame of the contract is through
bid,
June 2023. And that's my motion.
I second.
Is there any other discussion about the, invitation to bid from New England Aquatics for Milfoil? There being none, I'll call vote. Susan votes.
Yes.
And Justin votes yes, and the motion carries, and we'll sign off on that. Okay. That takes care of all of our old business. We'll move on to
Do we
new
wanna-
business.
Do we wanna text Peter Murkett or something, just to see what happened? Do we have a phone for him? I don't think I do either. Can we email him?
I'll email Peter.
Okay.
I didn't,
He may have had a problem.
I know he's traveling
Oh, is
in
he?
a car, so.
So if he's in a car, we may just have to wait till he can come back out.
and,
Well,
I
just
don't know if you
when
had
we-
questions from, I was ready to.
I didn't really,
I was
I
ready
think
to
it's, yeah,
Prove, going forward.
I think it's a great idea. I don't see any potential downsides to it.
So, new business, town administrator items, request to use legal counsel form regarding abandoned kayaks. So this is pretty simple. Melissa submitted a request to contact council about abandoned kayaks. I would motion to approve this request to use legal counsel.
Second,
Any discussion? There being
Pretty
none, call
straightforward.
vote. Susan,
yes,
Justin, yes, and the request is approved. Can we sign this?
Yeah, I'll keep all your signature stuff over here.
Okay, so we'll sign a clean copy. Okay. Kate Van Olst to office assistant position. I would move to appoint Kate Van Olst to the office assistant position for a 3-month probationary term.
second,
Second, is there any further discussion or public comment? Okay, there being none, we'll call a vote. Susan,
yes,
Justin, yes, and the motion carries, and Kate Van Olst is appointed to office assistant position for a 3-month probationary term. The chapter 90 project request wheeled loader.
The
we have to
Xfinity
sign
just-
yours,
yes.
right?
This was the one you guys had already approved, but they went to an online permitting thing, so I just need you to sign
Okay,
the new form.
that's what I understood from your email, so.
And it's the total cost of $21,945 to buy out the lease for a Cat 908 loader. I would motion to approve this chapter 90 request for the Cat 908 loader.
For the second time,
Yes.
I second.
Any further discussion? There being none, we'll call a vote. Susan,
Yes,
Justin, yes, motion carries, and we will sign a clean copy. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the state primary warrant. And this is for calling this state election on Tuesday, the 6th day of September 2022, from 7 AM to 8 PM. So this is a long one. For governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, secretary of state, treasurer, auditor, representative of Congress, counselor, senator, and general court, representative in general court, district attorney, sheriff, county commissioners, register of deeds, and we're in the 4th district in Berkshire County. I would move that the select board sign this warrant for 2022 state primary. There's a second. Is there further discussion? There being none, we'll call vote. Susan,
yes,
Justin, yes,
Have a clean
and
copy
we'll
here.
sign a clean copy.
and it looks like the constable needs to sign as well, yes?
Yeah, so once we give it to Terry, she will make those arrangements.
Excellent.
And then it needs to be posted the same way that our town meeting warrants are posted. Okay. that takes care of that. So review town administrator job description and corresponding draft memo. So as we will get to later in the agenda, one of the conclusions of the mediation that Melissa and I did was that we agreed to send out a memo to all, especially appointed boards and commissions. But I think in some ways, it really, everyone should know what the role of town administrator is, since it's a fairly new role in Monterey. And I think that it should go, that the process should go, and part of the agreement was that the process should go hand in hand with a review of the job description. I don't think that we should take that on as a two-person board. I was hoping that we would do that as a three-person board.
I think it's a good idea.
The idea being that everyone on the board now is different from the initial board that, you know, had the town administrator job description and kind of reinstated the town administrator position. So I think whether changes are made or not, it's worth a review, so that we're all on the same page of what the role is of the select board and the town administrator and department heads, and that there's no confusion. So I wasn't planning on making edits tonight, but I did want to introduce that.
Okay.
And I think especially with a new three-member board, where everyone is new, that's something that we should tackle.
I think it's a great idea, like, I agree with you that having all three of us on board would be good. I just wanna go on record as saying that we had recently, and, you know, I suppose this could be changed, but we had recently restructured the hierarchy such that the human resources director is independent and answers only to us, and I think it's really important that that remain in place. I did speak to Sophia about it. She is comfortable with that and understands, both the realistic issues involved and the political ones. Should we find we need to make any changes to contract, which she doesn't seem to think that she'll need, we could pursue that. But I think that it's important that, there be neither the real nor any appearance of the possibility of influence. Especially given what's come before and the situation we're in. Plus, I also think, it enables us to use HR resources, for annual town administrative review, as we were using for everyone else, in a more sensible way. So, I know that it may be different in other towns, but I don't mind being different.
Yeah, so I know that, like you mentioned, the intermunicipal agreement we may run up against, but I think, you know, the human resources director position is new to the town of Monterey. The town administrator position is relatively new, although now almost 30 and a half old, for this stab at it. But we are figuring out, and yeah, if we wanna tackle these, you know, I'll put them on old business and hopefully have a chance with the new board, so that there's no miscommunications, and so that we're all on the same page. And even if we disagree and it comes down to a vote, at least we're on the same page of
What the
how it
choice
stands.
is, right, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so that takes care of that item. Fiber Connect security agreement, and I see Adam has joined us. Thank you, Adam.
Good evening.
And is there anything that you would like to say? It seemed fairly straightforward to me that Monterey, essentially this is giving Monterey access to or security over the what cables, the fiber optic cables? Is that true for the next 10 years or so?
Yeah,
You
for
pay-
some, this was negotiated back and forth back when Don Colburn was on the board, and it went back and forth with the lawyers, but apparently it never got signed because we can't find any copies in our records. Our lawyers, I asked Melissa if she didn't have. So it, for whatever reason, just got overlooked. It's a very boilerplate security agreement that was defined in the town agreement. Basically says if we go out of business for some reason in the next 10 years, that the town has will gain control of the assets within the borders so that the network can continue to operate either under the municipality or a third party.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Are there any questions? Otherwise, I would move to sign on this security agreement. The only thing I just see now is it's dated 2021.
Yeah, I made it into it too, yeah.
Okay. Move to approve the security agreement with Fiber Connect.
Second,
Any discussion on that motion? Every now we'll call vote. Susan votes,
Yes,
Justin votes yes, and the motion carries, and we will sign that, a clean copy, the 2022 version. Thanks for joining us, Adam.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. So the next item on our agenda is the annual audit.
for the year, for the fiscal year 2021.
Second, yes.
Okay. Alright, so I was trying to find the list of the 3 things that they had identified. This is quite the packet.
Mhm.
And I feel like in order to fully understand it, you would actually have to be an auditor. Which sort of defeats the purpose of having an auditor, if you ask me.
Well, right, like the accountant and treasurer will get copies of this, right? And hopefully,
they have, and they've been working closely with myself, the treasurer, and the accountant to get all the information that they needed and answer any questions that may have arisen.
Okay, so my first question that's relevant to this is in the really big document, Town of Monterey, Massachusetts report on the examination of basic financial statements
Mhm.
for the year ended June 30, 2021. On the very last page, there's this summary of auditors' results, which seems pretty good, right? So internal control over financial reporting, material weaknesses identified, none, significant deficiencies identified, no, non-compliance material to financial statements noted, no, federal awards, internal control over major federal programs, material weaknesses identified, no, significant deficiencies, no. Any audit findings disclosed are required to be reported in accordance with 2 CFR 200.5168, no. And then you skip down, auditee qualified as low risk, auditee, no. They just finished saying that we passed all their tests and yet.
well, I would wonder if it doesn't require something like 10 years of clean audits,
That's
because I know,
but it is still a reasonable question,
Yeah.
I would like to know why we don't qualify.
because when did we start, 2017 or something, 2018?
Yeah, we were doing them every 3 years for a while, and then,
This is we started annual, not
right, so
Okay.
2020, so I think fiscal year 19 may have been our first.
annual,
So
where
this,
we've done
but
every.
so this would now be the third one, right,
Right.
19, 20, 21. So I just would like to know why we don't qualify it, what would it take for us to be a low risk auditee? And what, I mean, I'm assuming that's a good thing, but I wonder what it precludes us from while we are still not considered low risk.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, you wonder what the criteria are,
I do indeed.
so we would just ask
I can ask them.
Scanlon.
Yep. And then I'm trying, one of these has, I wish I had noted it, I'm not finding it. There was a list of 3 things that they had found that they had suggested we modify.
I do need you to sign one of the engagement letter though, that one,
So the engagement letter is for fiscal year 2022?
21.
Wait, they just finished it, why are we signing an engagement letter for a project they've already completed?
Because I guess they forgot to send it.
I don't know what to say to that. Alright, so now I'm still trying to, I might have to pull up my own copies of these. There was a list that had 3 things, one of which was already dealt with Article 19 on the 2022 all-town meeting, annual town meeting. However, I was wondering about the other 2, so let me see if I can find it out again. And it may be that we just postpone this and deal with this outside of that, which is fine. So, and then there's the things mentioned in the Town of Monterey, Massachusetts management letter for the year ended June 2021. So current year comments and recommendations were consider adopting an other post-employment benefits trust, that was Article 19, right?
Yes.
Okay, departmental receipt procedures,
And the treasurer is the trustee or something, is that how it's set up?
Yes.
in 3 other areas. Trying to find actual page 4. It says it's on page 4, but then, okay.
I can't even find what
So it's, the title of the document you send me reads Monterey 2021 ML. Management letter, I'm assuming.
Yep.
And on the final page, it has current year comments and recommendation, other matters. So item 1 was the thing we've already done. Item 2 was implementation of future GASB statements, regarding leases. So this might just be something we need to discuss outside of a meeting to get a handle on, or to investigate what the implications are of this, because I can legitimately say that I don't know what they are. It's even, like, I'm not sure what it refers to it anyway, so. And then there's other areas which have 4 other things there. So basically, really my question is, since we're only receiving this now, even though we're also signing the thing, so how did we manage to get done at annual town meeting that one recommendation, which they're only making now?
No, because it was probably in a previous report as well.
Okay, but it just took us a while to get to it.
Right.
Gotcha.
Well, I think when the audits first started, there were probably more recommendations and we've worked through them.
Yes.
Okay.
Which I think, forward progress is a good
Yeah,
sign.
and some of these things take time to work out, like I can't imagine we're gonna come up with internal control policies and procedures manual overnight.
Well, you actually already have, that's the procedures that we've been working on.
Aha, okay. I had understood them to imply something other than the internal control, than those policies. I thought it had to do with accounting practices, but I may be mistaken.
Well, we still have at least a few policies that we have as draft.
I think there's only one more, I
One more.
do need to double check that, I can get you that before we leave tonight.
So, and I see two letters, one from, the one Scanlon and Associates with Town Monterey letterhead, and one from Scanlon and Associates with Scanlon and Associates. letterhead.
The
think
Scanlon
one-
Associates one you need to sign tonight, that's
Okay.
the engagement letter.
Gotcha.
The other one is if you accept how they've written it, but
Okay,
you can wait until I get clarification on the low risk auditee thing.
okay, gotcha. Alright, so the Scanlon Associates, this is, we are pleased to confirm our understanding of the
Yes.
services we are to provide to the town of Monterey, Massachusetts for the years ended June 30th, 2021, and it's just an engagement. And the fees for the audit is $18,500. And I would motion that we,
I'm sorry, I thought it was 18,000.
18,500.
So, yes. And
Right, I thought you just said 1,800.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
then I was mistaken.
Okay.
18.5.
18,500. And we would agree, I would motion that we, sign the letter, which we believe correctly sets forth the understanding of the town of Monterey for the services provided by Scanlon Associates.
Second,
Is there any other discussion on the engagement letter? Maybe we'll call a vote. Susan,
yes,
Justin, yes. Motion carries, and we agree to the engagement letter, albeit
a little belatedly.
Yes.
slowly. And then we'll put on old business, the representation letter, to confirm that we agree with the audit. Okay, that takes care of the audit.
And to get an update on the questions.
Yep.
Concerning what progress we're making, what we need to work towards, and,
Yes.
what it means to be a low risk RT.
Yes.
Excellent. Alright,
So,
what's up next?
the next item is electronic voting for town meeting. So this year at town meeting, the town allocated $5,000 to electronic voting for town meeting. I ran into the town of New Marlboro's moderator, Barry Shapiro, before their town meeting this year. And they used electronic voting. And they actually hadn't voted on it before a town meeting, but they did allocate monies this year. And the point being, we have a couple quotes, one from Turning Technologies and one from Meridia. I think it might make sense, if there's no strong reason for one or the other, potentially to go with the same platform as New Marlboro or another town. I just happen
Just get
to,
it, New Marlboro used that one, and who used the other one?
Lennox and Stockbridge, they use the other one.
yeah, Meridia. So, I don't know, I mean, the one thing that we would wanna check, and I'm not sure if anyone has their town meeting on the same day as we do. But the idea being, if we know there's a big vote coming up, if we don't necessarily share the clickers, as in we share one batch, but we could maybe borrow. Hey, can we have your bag, and we won't open it unless we need to, of clickers. But then the question becomes, how many clickers do we wanna buy?
Wait, so one thing would be to borrow somebody else's, and the other one would be to have our own.
No, I think we should probably have our own, whether it's rented or buying. I think buying really makes sense.
I would agree with you, because, looking over the numbers, it seems like renting, it won't be very long between where we would have already paid the cost of owning them. If you could try it for free, that'd be one thing, but
Yeah.
if you're gonna have to pay to rent them, you might as well own them. And Melissa very thoughtfully brought up the question, well, it's tech, how quickly is it going to age out? But, having looked at the numbers, it does look as though 2, max 3 years of rentals would pay for buying it, depending on which plan we had. And I think that, at least the one I think it was Meridian I looked at, they're saying they're good for a 10-year lifetime. So even if the tech aged out in 5 years, we'd still be net positive going forward with that. For me, the bigger questions are like the security, which I don't have the answers to yet, but I'm curious about, are the security of the system. Not that I think it's likely we're gonna have someone try and hack the system, but would like to know about its level of security. It looked like to me, correct me if I'm wrong, they would both require a laptop.
No, I think in my summary there that I gave you, one requires a laptop, right?
It mentioned both of this, the summary seemed to imply the stuff that I
One
read.
needed a radio frequency, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's some slight tech, differences.
Right.
I know that in New Marlboro, I'm speaking with the moderator, Barry Shapiro,
Which one did they use, Turning or
they
Meridia?
use Meridia.
Okay.
They're planning, I think they're more or less set on purchasing Meridia. And I believe they had someone in their town who was just tech savvy enough to run it. He seemed to think that it was simple enough. And they did some kind of a test vote, to make sure that it worked and that everyone's vote was being counted. And that it actually says on your clicker, like, your vote has been recorded. There's a little screen. But I guess as we consider which company to go with, one of the factors would be what towns near us might be open to sharing, especially if there is, for instance, the school district merger on this annual town meeting, or another, large item, big ticket item, we might be expecting more, or the potential for more than we buy. So it'd be nice to have that partnership.
I see, so your thought was that if we were in partnership and both towns purchased, but we had the expectation of possibly going over our purchase, that we could borrow them and only use them if they needed. I didn't understand what you were
Yes.
suggesting, got it.
I can forward you the emails from Barry, but yeah, I mean, my first thought was we would just buy one collective set of clickers potentially, but he's kind of saying we each bought our own 150. Just be that much easier if there's a couple broken or something like that. It's very clear who's, okay, that's Monterey's, and then when we have our town meeting, we use out of our bag until we need to use New Marlboro's bag or whatever.
Just have to way of
so-
identifying which ones were which, but yeah,
So there's nothing, I don't think we're ready to
make a choice.
but I wanted to update you and I told Barry that I would speak to the board about how many we wanted to buy, 125, 150. I think if we knew that we had a town right next to us that we could share with easily, it might be more acceptable to buy fewer.
Just recapping here, Melissa, so under turning, it says a computer with PowerPoint is recommended hooked up to a projector, additional costs. And then under Meridia, it says a computer will be necessary as a plug and play system, so it sounds like they both require.
Yeah, so I just,
Okay, no, I just was pretty sure of that, but I wanted to double check, cause trust but verify, even when I say it. Okay, yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a good idea. I mean, do I know if it's necessary? We've been using the ballot counting system, but it would certainly make things a lot speedier, and for some of those long town meetings, that could be a very desirable thing. Yeah.
So I will tell Barry that we are still,
It's still, we're
it's still
still
under
investigating, yeah.
consideration, and, we're still considering buying, I think we'd probably buy 150, whether we're sharing or not.
did
So-
they already buy theirs?
No.
No.
We
It'd be
did,
nice if they did, and they'd let us try them out at the
Well, this
special
is-
town meeting.
So this is what, and I can forward you the emails, but on August, I had spoken with Melissa about it, and it reminded me of the item, and it reminded me that I had spoken to Barry about it. And he said, we are zeroing in on a purchase, most likely from Meridia. I can go over the reasons with you, but they are clearly the best company for lots of reasons.
I'd really like to hear what his
Yeah.
reasons are. My gut feeling was in favor of Meridia also, but I'd really like to hear what their analysis was.
Yeah.
And why Stockbridge liked the other one.
So I do have an email from Michael on that.
Okay.
And then Barry told me, my instinct tells me that 300 would be a truly safe number.
I mean, if we both got 150,
Yeah,
right,
and I kind of told him, I thought that was way more than we were shooting for. And that our highest town meeting in the last 15 years was 151, I believe.
I thought we had a 160, that's what I was just gonna ask about, I thought you did a count recently, didn't you?
Yeah, either I or the town clerk put together a list.
Yeah, I think
Or
I'll find
administrators.
the email that I sent to you.
In all the
Right.
certified town meeting minutes, it says how many registered voters.
Right, yeah, and
are.
I remember you had done a number in that, and I remember the number 160, but I don't have a lot of confidence in it, so if you're saying it's 151, you probably looked at it more recently.
And Barry said, no reason why we can't each buy 150 and then we'd be really safe, although if Justin wants to limit the purchase to 125, we could certainly buy 175 or 200 if we wanted. Once we decide on the number, I can go back to Meridia and try to negotiate the best package deal for both of us. So we need to decide if we really wanna go with Meridia, and then if we do wanna go with Meridia, do we wanna share with New Marlboro? If we wanna share it with New Marlboro to any degree, or another town.
Right.
You know, I just happen to run into Eric, and he loves being moderator, and he loves the electronic voting.
It'd be great to hear, to hear his reasons for
Yeah.
preferring them, and then we can compare the two people's preferences and what their assessments are, cause if they've used them, they're gonna have more information than we do.
So I will get back to him, maybe he can make an appearance at our next meeting and have that discussion with us, so that we're not left wondering what the reasons are. But we will continue to work on that item. Select board secretary interest, so Melissa did pass on one resume of someone who had looked at the office assistant position and was interested in being, applying for the select board secretary position. If it's all right with you, I will reach out to her and see if she's available for an interview.
This is Laurie MacArthur.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if there's any,
I looked through her resume and it looks completely reasonable. I have not yet consulted her references, but why don't we interview her first?
at our next meeting.
And actually, I don't think there are any references on this resume.
No, I didn't
So, yeah.
consult the references, but that's certainly something we could ask. if we
Well,
need
yeah,
to.
well, let's interview her and see what we think, and then we can ask for references.
That's simple enough, so I will reach out to her and set up an interview. The next item is just select board webpage. So a lot of times I work, or the board has worked with Melissa on the webpage, and my question was just gonna be if I could help Melissa on, or work with Melissa on the webpage and have access to the webpage. I think it would only really make sense for one board member to do it, so that there's not like competing edits. And I wouldn't edit anything, substantive.
Justin, I trust your judgment, and if you're willing to put in the tech time.
Well, I just didn't want to, I know Melissa's, working on the whole website.
There's
But I
a
don't
lot
wanna have
do,
to
and-
reach out every time and say, hey, I noticed this little thing or that. Like, I don't ever know what happened with the sign at the transfer station. But that's not something that I really brought up for me. Anyways, sometimes I think of things, or let's add that document to it, but I don't want to, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't stepping on any toes. But if that's fine with you, then I would share that responsibility with Melissa.
So I brought up one other thing to Melissa, wondering if, some people have complained about having trouble finding the YouTube postings. I don't think that there's like masses of people out there clamoring for access, but it did occur to me that, if we actually had, even though we can't post it on our website, if we could post a link so that people wouldn't have to look for it on YouTube, which
Yeah.
can be, if you put the date with a dot instead of slash or whatever, it can be annoying to find it. So if it were possible to post those with, the date and a clickable link.
Yeah.
That might be an easy solution. I don't know how hard, maybe it's not easy, I don't
Yeah.
know, but that, since we're talking about the webpage, that would be one thing I might
Well, I
put
know,
out there.
one thing that we've been doing over the past year is posting more stuff to the website and the minutes of the documents and the recordings to the YouTube. And I think in some ways it's worked out really well, but I know it's been,
There's
you know,
maintenance issues.
it's asking more and more of Melissa, so I'd be willing to help share in that responsibility.
And,
Um,
yeah.
And, yeah, and also, you know, I think someone said they couldn't find the YouTube link to our meeting last week, but probably because we didn't meet last week. That happened. So anyways, I mean, sometimes there's miscommunication.
Right, yeah.
But
Well,
for the
they-
most
maybe
Maybe
part-
that's the same person that thought I was late in posting it.
Exactly.
So,
They didn't mention which meeting they couldn't find, so.
well, the other thing that's happened is, I've had on my desktop with my computer for 6 months now, a video which had an executive session in it, so we can't post it, I guess, unless we've released the executive. Now, I just thought about that, I didn't think about that until now, but the recording is weird where sometimes, you know, we'd have a meeting and then we go into an executive session, come back and stop the recording, this and that. But I've had it and I told Melissa I was gonna figure out how to edit it out and I never did. But yeah, I mean, it's nice that we're posting more out there, but there's some hurdles.
Yeah.
to it,
And
so.
anytime you start endeavoring on a new thing that involves tech, there's going to be hurdles. But at least we're moving in the right direction.
Alright,
Alright,
so I will share that responsibility with Melissa then, if that's fine with you.
that is fine with me.
Okay, number 13 was the time clock software. I guess there,
First correction, it's not actually software, it's just a,
oh, is it just a web?
it's a web,
Browser.
and there's an app for your phone, and there's just a web page that you log into.
And so how is it rolling out? Is it rolling out?
So
Or is that-
you wanna say?
Yeah.
Okay, go
Well, one thing in particular is that I'm working, with Melissa, so I'm gonna learn how to use the time clock web browser, to help, to train the town clerk on it. But, yeah, more generally, I mean, I guess an update on how it's going. And I think what it's also invited is other questions, like human resources related questions, like how does someone clock in when they're on call, or how does someone clock in when they're on a site visit or something? And I guess they can have access to their internet, and then someone brought it to me, if we're gonna be asking people to use their phone, like anyone who works on a laptop or a computer in town hall, that's fine. But if they're working out in the field and we're asking them to clock in and out on a phone, we really should provide them the phone. I don't know if that's still, I think back when cell phones were not so popular, if you're gonna ask an employee to do something on a phone, we really should provide them a phone. But that would be a large,
Also now,
Burden.
it's actually, I would, on the one hand, that's good, on the other hand, I wouldn't really wanna be carrying 2 cell phones, right? Like,
First off, the only person that would apply to is Don Chirico.
Right.
He has a town cell phone.
well, I was thinking like the highway workers, and no
So
one's,
they are using their phones and they have a call-in, so each department that we're setting up is kind of unique to their department. So the highway has a call-in button. So if they're called in for a tree down, they don't do a regular clock in and clock out, there's a call-in clock
okay,
in button.
okay,
So, and they've been trained, it's working very well, Jim knows what he needs to do to approve all his guys' time. This will be the end of this payroll this week, so, I just met with them again, as well as Michelle who does our payroll, so, see how that's gonna seamlessly, so basically what's gonna happen, it'll be much easier on them once we get everybody on it, because when the pay sheets get approved in the software, it just automatically uploads into Harbors. So it's gonna save a lot of data entry, maybe in the future we can lower our entry.
and
Yeah,
well,
that was
data
gonna-
entry plus probably errors, because every time you have data entry, the possibility of additional errors occur.
Well,
and errors can happen on either input, but
Yes, but the more data entry you have, like, so you can make an error writing it down, and then you can make an error entering it.
sure.
That's 2 possibilities instead of 1 possibility.
That was another question I was gonna have, is we have a contract with the treasurer,
Yes.
which we just agreed to. And we also have in the budget, town treasurer software, which is not this software.
Right.
Am I
The
mistaken?
accountant treasurer software is the Vadar that we do
Yeah.
all of our accounting.
I was kind of along the same lines, if we're making a contracted services job easier, why are we footing the bill, right? If, shouldn't, in some ways, I don't know, I mean, we could go back to the contract, but it seems to me like if our contracted tree company wanted a faster, better chipper to make their job easier, they would pay for it, not us, because we have the contract with them. But I know we did just sign off on the treasurer's contract, but that is a question, is I wonder if the treasurer should pay for the software if it's really benefiting them.
Well, no, we pay for the Harper's service. The Harper's payroll service is a fee to us for processing payroll. So this is an add-on to the service.
Okay,
This is just gonna make input, rather than 2 inputs, it's gonna be only 1, and it's coming directly from whatever the employees clock in and clock out.
gotcha. Alright, well, I guess we'll just stay up to date as it rolls out, and I know that it was really a test, and we're moving department by department,
Yes.
and,
So far we've got you and highway.
And so starting on the 21st, it's supposed to be the clerk, hopefully the library. Mark hasn't gotten back to me if he's gonna be ready or not. And the council on aging outreach.
Okay.
And then I have to work, like I said, because each,
Cause
Department
they're all
is
tweaked, right.
you know, like you guys submit monthly, well, I submit monthly. So we need to create a different, page for that, and, like Don Trico will be different because he'll actually be logging in from anywhere in town, whereas right now it limits you to, like, if you're a town hall employee, you can only use the town hall computer to log in.
But it's good that it's possible to tailor it to the particular job, since we have tasks that involve different.
No, it's really a cool
It's
system.
very cool.
Jim's been raving about it for what he's had to do for the highway guys, and I think the guys find it much easier than the clunky system we had up there before.
And the fact that it has an on-call in it is really useful too.
And it's nice because the guys, they can go in and look at their timesheet, and they can there's a request change button in there that they can send something to Jim, like, oh no, I forgot to clock out when I left today, or something like that, and he can make amendments, so it's, at some point, which I didn't have them turn it on yet, staff will also be able to request time off through there as well, making it a little more seamless.
Okay.
Figured slow and easy.
well, I guess the only other question I have is like, what if we hire a highway worker or another worker and they don't have a phone? I know, like, the building inspector is provided a phone, but if, as we roll it out, let's just, keep it, look, it's 2022. We think everybody has a phone, but, if ever we hire an employee who doesn't have a phone and we're expecting them to clock in and clock out with their phone, do we then get that employee a phone, or?
They have the option to do a laptop up there as well.
Gotcha.
Which, so Jim has his computer there, and they can always log in there if they needed to.
Okay. Cause I know I wouldn't have the problem of not owning a phone, I would have the problem of my phone not having battery power left. So that would be my problem.
Dude, you gotta get yourself like a solar charger, just leave it on top of your phone.
Well, I've got an outlet thing, but the charger's horrible.
But the charger's horrible, so you need a new charger?
No, the thing in the phone, it's been bad since I got it. Anyway, I don't mind my phone being not alive, but I'm just saying if I had to time clock
Right,
it
right.
now, okay.
But it sounds like it's not a problem right now, so let's not borrow trouble.
Right. We'll definitely, there's options to cross that bridge if it.
It sounds like it's a very flexible system, given all the
Actually,
things
a lot
that
more
it can
flexible than
tailor.
I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's kind of impressive, actually. I guess it's been vetted through a lot of different systems, and a lot of these issues have come up because they're not unique to us, so.
Right.
All right, are we done with the time clock?
Yes, so
Okay.
moving on from time clock software, we have appointment to vacant finance committee seat. So we have a seat that would, the appointment would be until the next election. We agreed to accept appointment request applications, forms until August 12th, I believe it was. And we received 4 such applications from Roger Tryon, Eileen Marcus, Donald Coburn, and Kevin Moody. We had a discussion last night with the finance committee that they will interview people to make an appointment. I know we're not really in a rush, but I do hope that the finance committee, does make those interviews, because we do have, there always is work to be done, and soon, we'll be discussing goals for the upcoming budget season.
I had the, I don't know, I did say there that I hoped we could make the appointment at the meeting after the election, which is 2 weeks, whether they can work within that, or we might have to go an extra week or something. I don't know, but I had the impression that they were going to reach out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I guess just the point being that, I know, most of the applicants in one way or another, and I've had some experience with them and read their applications, and I feel somewhat comfortable moving forward with that process. I feel like I have a good sense, I've worked with some of these people or attended meetings that they've been on committees on, because many of them have been involved for years. And
I don't disagree,
Yeah.
but I do think waiting till we have the 3rd select board member seems sensible, since it's only,
Yeah.
A couple weeks away, and I don't know that, I think Frank hasn't met all of them, and Michelle, had only met Eileen yesterday, and hasn't really ever talked to, Roger about financially related stuff, and since they have to work together as a team and we have the opportunity to let them do that, it seems smart, because what we want is a committee that can work constructively together, as well as has skill sets that dovetail nicely, so that there's different skills that they bring to the table to work together, rather than, having a big empty spot of no one's good at whatever. So,
we're meeting in a couple weeks, and
Yep.
hopefully the finance committee, and I might, when I reach out to Michelle about the tree item, touch base with her, just that, I feel, and I agree, it's good to have input from the committee that, has the vacancy, but, I've worked with some of these people and seen them in action.
so have I, but
Yeah,
we're not the ones that would have to work with them.
well, we will in budget season.
Yes, but you know what I'm saying. I
Alright.
agree with you, I agree. Alright,
The next item is Conservation Commission appointment, Kevin Moody.
Yep.
Which is a very welcome appointment. And he's been to a couple Conservation Commission meetings, and he will join some of the newer members. I would move to appoint Kevin Moody to the Conservation Commission for a term of 3 years through August 17th, 2025.
this is gonna sound like a weird question, but are they always appointed?
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't really matter when, what I was gonna say is, should we make the appointment end at an election, but it doesn't need to, so it's moot point.
Well, it does and it doesn't. In theory, and Donna commented on this when she saw some of our appointments, I think in particular the Historical Commission. The Historical Commission, the Conservation Commission really should be staggered terms.
Right.
We're in a little bit of a tricky situation where, in this instance, we are having trouble finding people just to be on the Conservation
Right.
Commission, let alone stagger their terms.
Right.
Properly, and this has been going on for a few years to differing degrees. So we've been in the habit of making 3-year appointments unless expressly told that the people that want to serve less than 3 years. If you wanted to, we could make it a shorter appointment and or end on a fiscal year so that it would be, a less random in the future. But otherwise, I think.
I think 3 years, I wasn't suggesting shorter, I was gonna say if we wanted to extend it, it should be 3 years and however many months to end on the fiscal year,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's necessary.
And I don't know, Melissa might know, Mass General Law kind of guides Conservation Commission, Historical Commission appointments, and it says 3 years, right? But from what I remember from the Historical Commission, Mass General Law, it didn't say has to be 3 years, but basically you start with one, when you're forming a new Conservation
You make
Commission,
them staggered.
1, 2, and 3 years. And then it does say 3-year appointments, but I don't know how much they considered
This
not
situation,
having a
right.
conservation commission and then having some people who are willing to be on it for a short time, but those are the only people who are willing to be on it.
Right.
And they're veterans, so it's tricky.
We're doing our best under the circumstances. We're trying to get people and we have a new person and everyone's enthusiastic about it, so I wasn't trying to be difficult at all. I was just trying to figure out how we should stagger them. If it needs to be 3 years, let's do 3 years.
I think it's actually a bylaw that stays 3 years, but I'm trying to find it really quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll look for the history.
When the commission is first established, the terms of the members shall be for 1, 2, or 3 years, and so arranged that the terms of approximately 1/3 of the members will expire each year, and their successors shall be appointed for terms of 3 years.
And that's almost exactly the same way that the historical commission.
It works, right. And that's our bylaw?
Yeah, and I think right now, most
Well-
of them are staggered, aren't they?
Well, and
Probably because we
except the 3
took,
that-
yeah, except the 3 that weren't, but they were short.
so I'm looking at Mass General Law on
Okay.
historical
That-
commissions.
Right,
That was Mass
that
General
was
Law.
Mass General Law
Yeah.
for the Conservation Commission.
And it's more or less the same thing. But, I mean, they mean staggered, so that 1/3 of members
You're
expire
trying to
each year.
prevent
Yeah.
everybody from expiring in the same year,
Yeah.
it makes complete sense.
Um,
But in our case, it's taken so long to recruit people that we'll have the staggering anyway.
So right now you have 3 that are obviously expiring next month, and then you have 1 expiring May of 2025, two in May of 2025, but one's May 25th and one's May 4th, and then you would have this one.
So that's Rosalind, Dober, and Noel Wiki.
Right.
But it doesn't say staggering, it says staggering so that 1/3 of the members, at least in the historical commission, will expire each year. So it's not staggering by months, it's staggering by years.
Indeed.
But I would say, how about next time we make a conservation commission appointment, if we can find people, hopefully, we can make it expire we can start staggering.
Right.
But right now, we only have 3 out of the 7
Yep.
seats, so you could have 3 anyways. But, no, I mean, I think ideally, and hopefully, if anyone's out there watching this and you wanna be on the conservation commission, let us know. Cause I asked Chris if he was willing to stay on past September, and he said, no, not really. And it seemed like, speaking for the 2 other members appointed for September, that no one really wanted to stay on.
Well, see, I talked to Chris, he was realistic that he understands one of them is gonna have to stay on for a little longer.
Well, he said he hoped that one would informally come to each meeting, but that he didn't feel like that, he presented that plan, but no one
He jumped at it.
jumped at it. So we are looking for conservation commissioners, we
Right.
really are, and,
And I've tapped everyone I could think of that seemed like they had either the interest or the background for it, not to avail, so.
so I would call a vote on the motion to appoint Kevin Moody to the Conservation Commission for 3 years through August 17th, 2025.
I say yes.
And I will vote yes, and the motion carries, and thank you, Kevin Moody, for serving the Conservation Commission. The next item is nothing for the select board to act on, but an update from the Quabbin mediation service that Melissa and I took part in on 2 occasions, July 11th and August 2nd. So we had here's 7 points that we agreed upon at the meeting and by email afterwards. So that's just an agreement between Melissa and I, not for the select board, but just to update the select board
Appreciate it.
on
Thank you.
that outcome.
But we are gonna sign it, right?
Yes, yeah,
And
but
thank you guys for participating and coming up with that.
so I will sign the agreement as will Melissa, but it's not a select board agreement, it's just a
It's
Justin
agreement
and
between the
Melissa
two of you.
That takes care of new business, correspondence, minutes, and public comment. So, I wanted to update you, as I'm supposed to pursuant to the council contact policy, that I did contact town council about the Votes Act. So that was under item number 2, I filled out a form and I approved it, it's on the form.
And thank you for doing that in timely fashion so we could deal with everything today.
So, yes, we got those answers, if there's any, and I just sent those to you as I got them today. And Melissa and Susan both have the answers there. Do we have any follow-up questions for her, or are we kind of satisfied? And for the upcoming elections, the select board will decide on the number and the police chief will do scheduling?
That does seem like the correct approach.
Okay.
And if you like, I will go ahead and have another conversation with Gareth about, using the on-duty officer.
Yes, and you can, Gareth should see what Donna wrote about that as well, right? Especially point number 3. If you're gonna talk to Gareth about it, would you please
Make sure
forward
he
again
gets that,
what Donna
yeah.
wrote? Then item, or 17B is just a couple just updates from town council. So Tracy Brennan and the Parks Commission had some follow-up questions regarding the beach parking. And Tracy asked if she could speak with town council. There was, Donna provided an answer and said, do you have time to speak? And Tracy said, we wanna get approval. And I said that as regards the council contact policy, if we've already approved an item and there's follow-up, then we've already approved, that follow-up can continue. But just to let you know, because it will probably show up eventually on
On the bill,
the bill.
excellent. But I'm glad they're going forward with that,
Yeah.
because I think it's a good thing for them to get clarified and pursue.
It's turning out to be incredibly complicated.
Incredibly complicated, which I'm sure is why it is as it is, right? Like, because it's complicated, everyone just went, oh, it's complicated, ew. So I applaud them for being willing to continue to investigate it, to try to come up with a way to solve the problem, because it is an issue, and we have to come up with a way to figure out a better solution, whatever that may be.
And then the other update does relate to the select board more directly, which is that I had requested permission to ask about executive session minutes and when to release executive session minutes, when you enter executive session for purpose 1. And Donna.
Purpose 1 was,
Yeah, it's for if you're going in to discuss an employee's reputation or character rather than professional competence.
right,
Or discipline or dismissal of an employee. Those would be your real reasons to enter into executive session under purpose 1.
okay.
So we have 3 executive session minutes from last year that we have not agreed. We have to do our periodic review as to whether or not we think that the minutes should be released for public view. That would be, if I'm not mistaken, October 4th, November 4th and November 17th, or thereabouts. I think that it's a decision that the board should make. The board could delegate that decision to a member, as we've learned. It could delegate that decision to the secretary of the board, who's not even on the board, if it wanted to, right? But I think that the board should really make that decision. Hopefully, we'll have a third member too. I know that neither you nor the third member of the board will have been present at those executive sessions. But you can be privy to the executive session minutes. You can read Donna's response and determine whether or not you think those minutes should be released to the public. I don't think it's incredibly cut and dry. The gist of it seems to me to be how does she phrase it? Basically when a matter is closed,
And final action has been taken, the minutes be released, but those portion of the minutes that evidence discipline of an employee be redacted from public release.
Yeah.
Which definitely makes it not cut and dry,
Yes.
because then you have to determine what you're gonna redact.
what you're going to redact and if the minutes are going to be released. So
Right.
I wanted you to have this. I don't know if you have the approved executive
I
session.
do not have them.
I
To
think
my
that's something that we can share with Susan. So Melissa will please send you those.
And what I think we should do is we should also wait till Scott, and like when Scott's on, like, I know he's gonna be deluged, but I do think that having that third mind address the issue would
And-
not be foolish.
We may also disagree and it'd be good to have it.
Yeah,
That's
on
right.
A, whether it should be released, and B, what should be redacted.
Well, the what should be, yeah, I mean, that's a completely different question. The first question, should the minutes be released? And we are required by the open meeting law to do a periodic review of any unreleased executive session
Right.
minutes. So we have this,
Do we go into executive session to do that?
it depends, we can ask Donna.
The infinite regression of
But
executive session.
we also have June of this year executive session minutes that have not been released. So we should do, while we're doing the periodic review, we should review those minutes. I'm not saying they should be released, or I'm just saying we should review them. But now we have this guidance from Donna about what we should consider. But it is ultimately up to the board. Donna told me when I did speak with her briefly here in town hall that the board could come to a completely reasonable decision in a, toss-up case. And if there ever is an appeal to the open meeting or open division of government, if there's ever an appeal to the state may decide that we need to release them, and we weren't necessarily wrong, it's just that the state has the final say. So all we can do is our best to figure out whether or not they should be released and what should be redacted, if anything.
Okay.
So that will be for the next board, but you have that opinion now. The other mail and correspondence, but we'll take it up in old business sooner than later. The other mail and correspondence is I just wanted to acknowledge receipt of our first formal proposal, meaning the proposal based on the form that we put out for the use of ARPA funds, which was submitted by Tom Mency of the Parks Commission, and we'll append it to the minutes so that if anyone else wants to see how to just fill out one of those forms, I think Tom and the Parks Commission did a good job, so.
Yeah.
And he supplied plenty of documents so they can look at that, and I just wanted to acknowledge it. I don't think we agreed that we won't act on that till October. One thing we could do is we could invite Tom in, or even the whole Parks Commission if we have questions in advance of the deadline.
Right.
But I just wanted to acknowledge that.
And I understand from Lori Shaw, that they're going to be also refilling out the form.
Yeah,
So
I saw that.
resubmitting according to the correct form,
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah. And that would be I'm trying to think of who did bring up ARPA requests. So it was the fire department, which we already handled, the Southern Berkshire Ambulance, which we handled, and then it was the Park Commission, the Community Center Committee, and the Renewable Energy Working Group. So we should just remind Peter.
I was just gonna say, I don't think we've seen one from the Renewable Energy Working Group either.
And anyone else is welcome as well, but
Right,
those
of
people
course.
have expressed.
I had forgotten about the Renewable, so I'm glad you reminded me.
Last but not least, well, actually, should we deal with, Peter's item, the UMass Clean
Yeah, let's
Energy
go
Extension
ahead.
Program?
I mean, I think that you're right, there's no reason, I think it's fairly straightforward. I don't see any downside to the town for getting professionally overseeing student work, especially with engineering students, can be extremely valuable, and they often have very innovative solutions. I've worked a fair amount with the folks at Smith who have a similar program, but in mechanical engineering, and the students can do some really, really excellent work. So it could be a real benefit to the town, and it's not gonna cost us anything, I don't think, so.
And this, we'll get a scope of work if I'm not mistaken, but this is just a preliminary. I would move that we, take a preliminary vote of support for the town's participation in the UMass Clean Energy Extension Program as recommended by Peter Murkett of the Renewable Energy Working Group.
I second,
Is there any other discussion? Call vote, Susan votes.
yes?
And Justin votes yes, the motion carries. And then whenever that scope of work is available, we'll review that. But this, it green lights them to
Continue.
continue. Last but not least, minutes. So 8:13 we won't deal with, but I drafted them up and I wanted, because I drafted them up, I wanted you to be able to have them. I mean, unless
They're there, okay.
you're ready to,
Well, let's do the other
we
ones
could,
first.
yeah. Alright, so
Let's do the other
7:27
ones
is the
first.
most
Okay.
pressing. A moment of silence was held.
Oh, and you're blue, okay. Okay, so I'm gonna say it should read, seek prior permission to contact town council, and then,
That works. Oh, and speaking of town council updates, Don Tirico did contact town council, and Donna forwarded to me and said, did you get approval? And
I'm sorry.
by the select board, and I said, I sent Donna the new town council.
I had already sent that to her, that's weird, maybe she didn't know.
She said it's a zone, she said something like, this is not a zoning enforcement, something or other. And I said, I just responded, I said, it's up, the way we worded it, it's up to the police chief or the building inspector, it's their discretion. And she responded, no. So I just did wanna update you, that's also gonna show up on the bill.
Okay,
Everything comes clean in the bill,
um,
but Don did reach out about that.
also, I did wanna, since we're tired about this now, I have looked into the issue that he raised. It is not, in fact, it was bugging me, cause I now know that it wasn't the bylaw that's a problem, and I wanted to change it, I'm like, but it was the bylaw in the meeting, so we don't have a bylaw that requires submission to the town secretary / now town administrator. What we have is a procedure that was established by the zoning board of appeals. So it's a procedure, no bylaw changes necessary, procedural changes necessary, and we're in the process for setting a,
When I heard that too, I was like,
yeah, right. We're in process for having a administrative meeting of the zoning board of appeals, and where we will, he's right.
Yeah.
It is mass general law, we will have to change it, it'll make things less efficient, but it's the law, so we're gonna do it. And we will have that meeting, and that will be changed.
I did see the administrative meeting posted.
Yeah. But I just wanted to, you might have, but, for the record.
If Scott is on the select board and you're on the select board, how will that cause any problems on the zoning board of
as
appeals?
long as they're not talking about select.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
I figure, I just,
And you know what, I would be willing to step down, but it's not like there's anybody banging on the door there, and we don't have any alternate members.
And you need 5, so
Yeah.
you have to have a super majority.
Right, it would be very bad to not have a full ZBA.
yeah, well, I want to speak to the YouTube viewers, if anyone wants to be able to see.
That would just be done.
ADA coordinator fence viewer.
The YouTube viewers, right, okay. The coordinator and fence viewer, oh my god.
So we will go with to contact, we'll remove the ing, and I agreed on
Seek
that.
prior permission to contact town council, right, okay. Where else I heard about the,
The other thing I see is at the bottom of that paragraph before 6:30 PM.
wait, what? Oh,
The
here?
board
Yeah,
also
yeah.
discussed with Don a permit, recent issue that occurred with electrical permit application and inspection that was thought to be, let's just go with blue. that was thought to be held up, but it actually been inspected the homeowner contractor were not aware. I just had written as that was held up, the issue has been resolved,
I see, okay,
or something. You're red, I'm blue,
I'm red, you're blue.
you're red.
Yep, do you wanna go with blue or red?
It's all who sends me it first,
Yeah.
and you happen to send it to me first this time, Justin.
There you go.
Wow, really had-
So,
Either one, they get to the same point,
right,
you pay.
I'm going with red.
Okay.
Because it was actually an issue. Just We strike again.
Yeah. The other thing I just noticed was the council here.
Where?
Uh,
It should
5-1.
be council, yep, not council.
Yeah, obviously just one of those,
Yeah, do you care?
I mean, blue, it's the same thing.
Well, except we just putting the word not
I
in
know,
different places. Why part-time employees were not invited seems to flow better to me.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
part-time were not invited.
actually, I was struggling with that
Yeah, I
at
know.
like 5 AM or 6 AM
Oh my
or
God,
something.
bless your heart.
I think it
All
was
right,
like 6.
so,
actually 6, but
I
I
moved
was
that
like,
we.
how is that, where does the knot go, jeez, I couldn't figure it out.
I moved that we approve the minutes of the meeting of the select board 7/27/22 as amended.
Second. And
I vote yes.
Yes, Justin votes yes, approved, that's good, cause we're running up the 30-day deadline.
Ta-da, yay. Next.
8-3, you wanna tackle 8-3?
Sure, why not? In for a penny, in for a long night. Okay, he's still blue and I'm still red, yay. Makes it easier.
So, we are, what paragraph is that? 8?
8, yeah, here we go
So
again.
Susan had a question about the clerk's response, explaining the process for reaching out to newly appointed elected officials regarding opening law requirements, conflict of interest, and swearing into office and other items in accordance. You have Terry answers are not reasonable as most appointed or elected are appointed or elected in May or June, and the clerk is not appointed until January. And I had Susan question why Terry's conducted in
I'm
January.
fine with what you wrote.
Appointments and elections are mostly May and June.
I'm fine with what you wrote.
Okay,
I don't have an answer to that.
yeah.
Just so we know. Right, okay, so let's see.
And then Susan, will take 8 weeks. Okay, 9A, we gotta see a bunch, to request Susan and Justin will agree to request an office hour schedule for the full 19.75 at discretion hour hours will not be allowed. Workdays should be non-consecutive, I think that's good, because days are clear and must also contain a majority of hours during normal business hours, fine. The only thing is the B in there.
Right, to request, and as soon as we need to request an office hours schedule for the full, yeah, so B should be
Yeah.
out then.
Well, other than that, it's fine.
Yep.
Frank Adams,
It's getting, even my initials are getting illegible.
Frank Abbott commented at the board that having employees set their hours is very uncommon. that the board has the final authority on the schedule to ensure that it works for the town. Now, I don't think I changed the said in the thing.
Yeah, I'm confused. Oh, that's me. I accidentally, the double
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
we were both fixing said. You
Oh,
fixed said and I
see,
fixed
see,
said.
I see.
I fixed said and messed it up when I tried to fix it, so I had to fix my fix.
So we'll have to, but we have to figure out what Frank
Right.
Abbott commented.
Yeah, exactly.
Frank Abbott commented that the board has the final authority on the schedule to ensure that it works for the town. That was my,
Well, that was your comment. I mean, and I agree that we do have, but his comment was that it's unusual. My recollection of his comment was that it's very unusual to have an employee set their own hours.
okay, that's fine.
Right, that's my recollection of what he said, rather than what
So
I might have said.
Then go with red and remove
Okay.
blue.
How would it read though? I'm so confused.
For mine,
If we went with red, Frank Abbott commented to the board that having employees set their hours has the final authority of the schedule, that's confusing. Frank Abbott commented to
commented
the
that
board.
having employees set their hours is very uncommon. And that the board has the final, what if we do that?
Is very uncommon and,
Comma, and
Right.
the board has, so that's red and blue. Purple.
great. Did you catch that?
Yes.
Make sure I did it.
Alright, and then I have no problem with red, I just included the motion, and
He hot.
oh, he,
I don't know.
I think,
Ask the
and
tree
he's
warden.
accept, I just,
And he
I just
has
yeah,
accepted,
yeah,
right,
and then, other than that, do you have
okay.
any- I would motion to approve the minutes of 8/3/2022 as amended.
Second,
I'll vote yes.
yes.
Minutes are approved. Okay. Do we wanna do 8/13 or you wanna leave that for the next?
Let's leave it to the next,
Alright,
I'm about done.
Alright.
Done in,
Is that the agenda?
I believe it is.
Motion to adjourn the meeting,
Second,
call a vote, Susan,
yes.
Justin, yes, meeting adjourned at 7:53 PM.
Ooh, we beat the 2 hour mark, we rock. Well done, senor, another one bites the dust. Thank you. You okay?